Already got easy guns. Everybody gets one baby for the ball, kill them.
That sounds amazing. That's what animals do, don't they?
Morning everyone. Are you doing good? So before we start, just let's wait for a few minutes. Hopefully students coming in. Guys, did you notice that the assignment one has been released for alumnus? And this due date will be week 8, okay? Week 6, or week 5, week 5. Okay guys, shall we start?
Yeah.
All right. All right, so lecture 5. Before starting with lecture 5, what did we talk about last week? Do you have an idea? Yes? Yes? That flow diagram, right? So what's the that flow diagram?
Inputs, the outputs.
All right, there's input and output, but what actually is the that flow diagram? Sorry? Absolutely correct. The graphical technique used to describe an information system. So with that flow diagram, what we need to use? How we will use it? Based on what? How can we describe an information system using that flow diagram, DFD? What we need to use? Alright, so if we continue defining that flow diagram, that flow diagram is a graphical technique used to describe an information system, right? So with that technique, we need to use various symbols to show the data flow between the processes and the external entities in an information system. So at the end, the data flow diagram will be used to, it will show what the system does, not how it does it. I don't care about how it does it, what the information system does. This is my main concern. So the data flow diagram will show to me what the system does, what the information system does. All right? How many levels with the data flow diagram do we have? 3. The first one, context diagram. All right, so the context diagram, how many processes do we have? Just one. So the context diagram, which is the top level approach, it comes with one single process to describe the whole system, the whole information system. And plus that single process, of course, we will have external entities that will link to that single process. All right. So as we said, the context diagram comes with one single process. But what if someone asks you, I need to know more details about your information system. I need to know more details about your context diagram. One single process just show me the abstract level of your information system. But I need to know what other processes will be in your information system. What we need to do. So can you speak out, please? Level 0. How can we get to level 0? Exactly. So we need to break down that single process into another sub-processes. So that single process, we call it as a process 0. We will have from that one, process 1, process 2, process 3. So now we will have level 0. All right. Not context diagram. Level 0. All right. What else? What after level 0 we will have? Yes? Level 0, right? So level 0 means we need to break down that single process that represents the whole system into another sub-processes. But again, I need to know more details about that sub-process. What I need to do? Okay. What we did when we need to know more details about the single process in the context diagram, what we did? We break it down, right? We broke down that single process into another sub-processes. So we get level 0. Again, if level 0 comes with the 3 sub-processes and I need to know more details about each single process, what I need to do? Again, I need to break down that sub-process into another sub-processes to have more details about each sub-process. Right. So after breaking down that sub-process, we will be at level 1. And I asked you a question last week. Can we have level 3, context 0, 1? So can we have level 2, 3, and 4? Is that possible? Possible, right? So why is it not common use? Complexity. Because just imagine if you need to break down each single process into another sub-processes, so at the end you have sub-processes for the whole system. So the complexity will be so difficult to compare that model with other models. Alright? For this reason, actually, the most common levels are context diagram, level 0, and level 1. Basically, it gives you all the details you need to know about the information system. Alright? Alright, so from this point, we will continue working this week about something called flowchart and the data dictionary. Alright, so in terms of the life cycle of the information system, actually we are in the system design. Last week, the data flow diagram, we were talking about the system analysis. Alright, so today we will talk about the system design. Alright, so here we can see from this example, so can someone tell me this is which level of data flow diagram? Can we say this is a context diagram? Is it context diagram? No? Why?
Because more than one process.
Absolutely correct. Look here, we have process 1, process 2, process 3. That means those 3 processes came from another single process. So that one not a context diagram. Context diagram should come with one single process. All right? But here we have 3 processes. In addition, with the context diagram, can we have a data store? No, actually no. The answer is no. But here we have a data store. That means this one absolutely not a context diagram. This is a level 0. All right. So why cannot say this is level 1? Why cannot say this is level 1? What do you think? Yes.
If we go into detail, that one process.
Actually, I have details. I have process 1, 2, 3. Do you remember last week when we talked about the numbering of each process? When we say, for example, if we want to break down, for example, process 1, all right, to another sub-process, what we need to know, what we need to do in terms of numbering, we would say this is 1.1. That means this sub-process is apart from process 1. So that means we are in level 1, not level 0. But here, it's just number 1, 2, and 3. That means those 3 processes came from single process in a context diagram, and the number of that single process is 0. All right? Guys, is it clear? Context diagram, that single process is 0. Level 0 is number 1, 2, 3. It depends how many sub-processes you will have. Level 1, so for example, you need to break down one of those processes into another sub-processes. So, but you need to keep numbering. So if we need to break down process 1, we will have 1.1. If we want to break process 2, we will have 2.1. Okay? Anyway, so this is level 0 of data flow diagram. And as we said, we need to break down to know the single process, to know more details about the processes that's happening inside that single process. But the question here, if someone, for example, process 2, about the main functionality of process 2 is to create invoice, all right? If someone asks you, okay, now this is your level 0, and it's so clear you have 3 processes, full order, create invoice, apply payment. It's so clear to me, no problem with that. But the question is, if someone asks you, I need to know more details about create invoice, how actually that process will create invoice to the customer or to the user inside the information system? Is there any steps to create invoice? All right? So, in order to answer such questions, we need to use the flow chart. So the flow chart can be used to describe detailed steps within a process. All right, so again, if the question was how, for example, an invoice created, the main functionality of this process is to create invoice. But if the question was about how actually this process will create the invoice to the information system, is there any steps we need to follow, that process needs to follow to implement? Actually, the answer is yes, there's a steps. Okay, so how can we show these steps actually? So the answer is using a flow chart. A flow chart can be used to describe detailed steps within a process, within that process. The same thing goes with the full order, with the same thing goes with the applied payment. Is there any steps actually to implement the main function of that process? The answer is yes. Using the flowchart, we can use the steps. All right, so last week the same thing did actually. We have number of symbols to implement to draw the dot flow diagram. All right. So here with the flow chart, we have the same thing with a little bit different symbols. For example, in order to use the flow chart, we need to follow those symbols. For example, the first one actually is oval, or we can say rectangle with rounded corners. All right. That shape will represent start or end a step. When you have number of steps, in order to start implementing that steps or ending the steps, actually we need to use that symbol or this shape. All right. The second one, actually this arrow. The main function of this arrow is just to show the direction of the flow chart. All right. Can someone tell me, with the data flow diagram, what is the main function of an arrow? The relationship of what? No. Here, with the flow chart, an arrow, it's the main functionality of an arrow is to represent or to show the direction of the flow chart, all right, from process to another. But with the that flow diagram, the functionality of arrow is a little bit different. Yes?
The data flows?
Absolutely correct. It is the data flow between a process, between external, between the data store. In addition to that, with the data flow diagram, you need to mention the name of the data flow, okay, that reflects that arrow. All right, good. So for the third sample, actually is the third shape that represents input and output for a system. All right, input means if you have this during the steps, for example, you need to read something, you need to read integers, you need to read, for example, student ID, names, whatever. The input is reading, for example. The output is, for example, you want to display, you need to print out something. All right. So in order to implement such steps for input and output, of course, we need to use that shape. What about the process and action? Of course, we have another symbol, which is normal rectangle, that represents a process or action. And for decisions, we have that diamond shape. Can someone tell me what does the decision means here? When we say decision, what does it mean, decision? A condition, exactly. Imagine, how many of you here are familiar with programming? Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So, for example, when we say if x, okay, greater than 100, what do we call this statement? It's a decision, right? So that means we have a decision. If x greater than 100, do something. Else, if x less than 100, do something else. All right? So the same thing here with this diamond shape. When we have such a statement, that means we have a decision. And the output of that decision actually is it true or false, yes or no. All right? We will have examples how we are going to use these shapes. For example, another shapes here, for example, for document simple or for a database. These are actually not that common use compared to those. Mainly those are 5 that we are going to use. But in case we need to, for example, print some documents inside the steps, or we need to use a database, of course, we need to use these 2 symbols. All right, so in terms of the flowchart, within a process, there are 3 types of control structures: sequence, selection, iteration, which is looping. For example, sequence is quite straightforward. Sequence means when you have a process with an arrow direction to another, a process or action. So we call this one as a sequence. Okay, quite straightforward. Sequence, we have one single action or a process that's referring using an arrow to another process or action. So the whole thing we called as a sequence. For example, here, first of all, we have a flow chart and we have a Java code. With the flow chart, for example, it's showing here we need to prompt user to enter student ID. And this is the first one. And then followed by what? Read student ID. Then search for student record based on student ID. Lastly, display name and current enrolled course. This is the flow chart. So the question is, can we represent this flow chart in a programming way? The answer is yes. For example, prompt user to enter student ID means what? I will tell you something. The flow chart usually just like a story. How you will sequence a story. As you read here, for example, we need to prompt user to enter student ID. That means we need to ask user to enter student ID. Then actually the system will read the student ID. Then the system will search for that student ID in order to what? In order to display the student name and enrolled course. So if you look at it as this sequence of information, it's just like a story, but in sequence. So in order to reflect that flow chart in a programming way, prompt user to enter student ID actually, that means we need to ask student to enter student ID, which is system.out.println. All right, this is using Java. Read student ID, that means that the student ID, you need to type the ID name, the student ID, sorry, okay, using myInput.nextIn. My input here is just an object from a scanner. With Java, when you need to type something from the keyboard, of course, you need to use a scanner. Before using a scanner, you need to create an object, all right? So this is for programming. In order to search student record based on the student ID that's been typed from the user, actually, there's no clear command here, but it just search student record to obtain family name, first name, and course code. Lastly, in order to print out the student name, actually with Java, we need just to say system.out.println, family name, first name, and the course code. So as you can see here, the flowchart can be reflected to a Java or any programming language you are using, Python, Java, or whatever. All right? Okay, guys, any questions so far? All right, so as we said, we have three types of control structure: sequence, selection, iteration. So the sequence is kind of straightforward. When we have process direct to another process, that means is a sequence. Selection means when there's a decision. All right, a decision. As we said, a decision means that statement, it could be yes or no, true or false. So if that decision inside diamond shape is yes, that means the process goes to one option, one process or action. Otherwise, it will go to another process or action. Let's have an example. Okay, an example to represent the selection. The diamond shape is here, and inside that diamond shape is the decision or our condition. If the total cost is greater than 50,000, all right, that means display high-cost projects. Otherwise, display low-cost projects. Okay? And in order to represent that flowchart in a Java way, it's quite simple. Just we need to say, because this is a decision, that means it's a condition. So in order to represent a condition in a Java, we need to say if total cost greater than 50,000, all right? System.out.println, display to the screen, high cost project. Else, that means it's below 50,000, system.out.println, low cost project. All right? So this is the selection, decision, yes or no, and this is how can we represent a flow chart in a Java in a programming way. Iteration or looping. In order to implement, for example, iterations on some statements or decisions, all right? So we need to use this iteration loop or this process. The same thing with the previous one. If we have a decision here, so we are using the diamond shape, and the decision was yes, that means go to the first or this process. And this process will bring me back to the decision to check again if the decision is still yes or true. If it's still yes, okay, take me back to the process and then bring me back to the decision. Once the iteration is done, so that means the decision inside the diamond shape is false. All right? So I will take the other way. No. For example, imagine you have a database, employee database, and of course there are some previous steps here. So open employee database, this is a process or action, and then followed by a decision. So the question or our condition here, have more records, the answer is yes or no. Okay, so let's have example here. Let's say we have 3 records, all right, in this employee database. So for the first iteration, have more record? Yes. So I will display name and employee gross salary. Let's say employee name is Sam and gross salary is 1,000. All right, so that from the process, it will take me back to the decision. All right, to the diamond shape. Have more record? I still have 2. Yes. Go back to the display name. So for example, with the second record, the name is John. All right? This process or action will take me back to the decision. I still have 1. Have more record? Yes. Display the name. For example, let's say Nathan. All right. So from this process or action will take me back to the decision. How many records still have now? How many records now I have? Do I have more records? No, we said just 3 records, and now we have 3 iterations, but the 4th one, it will check, have more record? No. So instead of going to that way, I will take no, because I have no more records. All right, so this is the process of iteration. When we have iteration of processes, we need to do using a decision. So the output from this diamond shape is yes or no. Have more iteration? Goes to this way. Otherwise, terminate the database or terminate the steps. All right, so here's any question. Okay, the output from this step takes me back directly to the decision. Why we can't say, for example, this process will take me back before open database? Can we use a pen here? I think yes. So. Okay, so let's say instead of the output here taking me directly to the decision, it will it will take me to to this step, open employee database. Is that correct? What do you think? So instead of this step, it will take me back to the open employee database. Is that correct? What do you think? Okay, in order to make sure is this step correct or not, take scenario. Iteration 1, open employee database. It will check the decision. Okay, have a record? Yes. Display the name. And I will go back to the open employee database. Is that correct? Why not?
Shall we to open databases?
Sorry?
You'll have too many open databases.
Exactly. So imagine you have a huge database, thousands of employees. Does it mean that with every iteration we need to open the database? It doesn't make sense, right? So of course we need to open the database just once, and then all the iterations will be after opening this database. Once we're done with the iteration, of course, we need to close the database. It doesn't make sense that with every iteration, with every checking, I need to open the database again. And in order to open, that means I need to close it first. So I need to have here an action or a process says, okay, close the database. It doesn't make any sense. It's totally wrong. So open the database just once, and after that, all the iterations will be after opening the database. Once the iteration is done, no more records, okay, I will close the database and continue processing all the steps. Okay? All right, so we have here another example. For example here, okay, so the example here, total mark, actually this process, the first process or action, just initialize two variables. Total mark equals 0 and enrollment number equals 0. And then I will open subject record file. I will check, is this the end of the file? Is this the end of the file? This is my decision. This is my condition. When I say, is this the end of the file, means, did I reach the end of the file? Did I read all the content of the file from the beginning till the end? Because with the programming, for example, you are reading a text file, okay, .txt. Actually, each line considered a step. So you would go line by line. How can we check? We go through all the lines, all the data of that text file. We need to check if we reach the end of the file. All right? So my decision here, my condition inside that diamond shape is this the end of the file? If this is the end of the file, okay, close the subject record file, calculate the average, the total mark divided by enrollment number, and display the average mark. And this is the termination of my whole steps. But if there is more details, I need to read from the file. So the end of file, actually, this is not the end. I still have more records. So I will implement a process or action. Total mark equal total mark plus student mark. Enrollment number plus. This process actually will incrementally increase the variable of enrollment number. So enrollment number first is 1, 0. For the first iteration will be 1. When continue iteration, all the file increase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 till what? Till the end of the file. Once I get to the end of the file, okay, I have the total mark. So I will close the record file, calculate the average, and display average mark. And this is the termination of my process. This is the end. Okay? Another example. As we said, this will start actually from the start, which is that rectangle with rounded shape. I have now two readings. One, I need to read the input cumulative cost, and I need to read to input this year cost. So I have for a previous year, and I have for this year. So that means I have two values. In order to calculate this year cumulative cost equal to this year cost plus the previous cost, previous cumulative cost, output, display, end. As you remember when we said the rounded shape actually represents the start of a process and the end as well. So in order to start, we need to use this shape. In order to end or terminate the process, we need to use the same shape with end as a label. Okay, guys, any questions so far? All good? All right, so, okay, so we have a case study 1. So let's work on this one together. So would you mind to have draft paper and try to draw a flow chart for this case, all right? So this case actually creates a flow chart for the process which reads two integers. So you have two integers, j and k, as its inputs. J is expected to be less than or equal to k. Can we say this is our condition? This is our decision. Right? So our decision here, j is expected to be less than or equal to k. The process then calculates the sum of all integers between j and k and then prints out the sum. Okay? So just for a few next 3-4 minutes, try to work on it, try to draw the flow chart, and then let's discuss the answer together. Okay? Right, just done. Okay, guys. Okay? So, let's solve this question together. First of all, we have a case that we need to read two variables, two integers, j and k, and then j is expected to be less than or equal to k, alright? The process then calculates the sum of all integers between j and k, and then prints out the sum. For example, j equals 3, k equals 9, so the sum is 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6, 7, 8, 9. The output should be 42 as the summation of all the integers between 3 and 9. Alright, so in order to represent this case as a flowchart, what we need to do first? Make it as a story. What is the first step here? What we need to do first? Sorry? Get the inputs. What are the inputs here? J and K. So we need to have a process or action to represent reading, right? So read J and K. Then what I need to do? What I need to do next? Initialize. Okay, so just before the initialization, just leave it for a while. I need to solve the main idea. Okay, so I have really two variables, j and k. Then what I need to do? The condition. What is the condition here?
J is less than k.
Exactly. So after reading, I need to check if the j is less than or equal to k. This is my condition, right? So I'm gonna use that diamond shape here, and inside the diamond shape is j if j is less than or equal to k. So if the output of this decision is yes, that means j is less than or equal to k. What I need to do next? If the output of that decision, if the output of my condition is yes, that means j is less or equal k. What I need to do next? I need to find the sum of what? All the numbers between j and k. Alright, how can I find the summation or all the integers between j and k? As we said in the example, j equals to 3, k equals to 9. So for the first iteration, when the first iteration j is less than or equal to k, the output is yes. That means I need to say sum equal what? How can I find the summation? I need to use a variable. What did you say before? The sum, right? So I need to have a variable. The variable is sum. So the sum equals what? Equals sum plus j. So j here is what? 3, right? So after this system, what I need to do next? I need to have the next variable after 3. What is after 3? 4. What I need to do so? I need to increase j plus 1. So I will say j equal j plus 1. So now j is a 3 or 4? 4. After this step, what I need to do?
You need to check if it's equal.
Absolutely correct. So after increasing j, I need to check if j is still less than or equal to k. So I will have an arrow from that step to my decision, the diamond shape. I will check again. So this is my second iteration. If j is still less than or equal to k. If it's still less than or equal to k, okay, go back, go inside that decision. I will have sum equals sum plus j. So now sum is what? It was a 3, now 3 plus 4. Right? Then after that step, what I need to do? Again, increase j plus 1. So now j is 5. After this step, I need to check again what my decision. If j is still less than or equal to k. Alright, so let's have a look at the solution here. First of all, of course, the start of the whole process with that rounded rectangle shape. Read j and k. This is my two variables. Alright, so in order to find the summation of all variables between j and k, I need to have a variable sum, and I